The night has always been a keeper of secrets. It wraps the world in velvet shadows, softening the edges of things we thought we knew, and reminding us that beyond the light of our fire, the darkness waits with stories of its own. Some call them whispers, some call them omens, and some, if they're honest enough, admit they have felt them too. The breath of the unseen brushing close in the quiet hours when the world belongs not to man but to something older. I tell you these stories not because I seek to frighten you, but because truth is often stranger and heavier than any tale born of imagination. What you are about to hear are not inventions. They are true accounts, passed down, etched into the memories of those who lived them and those who barely survived. 10 moments of night when the veil thinned and reality bent, leaving behind scars that no sunrise could erase. The first story comes from a boy who should never have been awake past midnight. He lived in a small village where the night was thick and absolute. No street lamps, no moon that evening, only the stars blinking like watchful eyes. He woke to the sound of his mother humming a lullaby. But when he turned in his bed, he saw her still asleep beside him. The humming grew louder, coming from the corner of the room. He squinted and saw a figure. His mother's shape, her outline exact, standing by the wall. The boy blinked hard, and when he opened his eyes again, the figure smiled at him. Not with his mother's gentle warmth, but with something stretched and wrong. He pulled the blanket over his head, heart hammering. When he dared to peek, both his mother in bed and the figure by the wall were gone. Yet the humming lingered until the rooster crowed. He never told anyone, but years later, when he grew into a man, he confessed to me, saying, "That night taught me the night is not empty. It's watching." Now, you might brush this aside as the dream of a child, but let me tell you another, and then you will understand how the stories begin to weave into one another. The second story belongs to a traveler, a woman who often walked long roads alone, trusting her feet and her courage. One autumn night, she crossed a bridge that hung over a slow black river. The air was cold, the mist rising, and halfway across she heard footsteps behind her. She stopped. The sound stopped. She walked again, faster. The steps matched her, always a breath behind. She turned. Nothing but mist. Yet the rope railing of the bridge swayed as if brushed by a hand. She whispered a prayer and ran the rest of the way, not daring to look back. The next morning, she learned that bridge was built where villagers once tied the condemned before throwing them into the river below. The condemned had begged, their feet dragging, their chains rattling. Perhaps the echo of those steps is what followed her that night. She swears she still feels a presence at her back when she crosses bridges, even in daylight. And so the night teaches, we are never as alone as we think. But the third story, this one is heavier. It comes from a hunter. He was strong, fearless, the kind of man who laughed at ghost stories told by the fire. One night, deep in the forest, he set his camp. The trees whispered overhead and the fire cracked. He lay down to sleep, but woke to the sound of something breathing, deep and steady, just beyond the glow of the flames. He rose, torch in hand, scanning the trees. Nothing. He sat again, listening. The breathing grew louder, closer, circling him. Then he saw it. 2 eyes, too high off the ground to belong to any animal he knew, glinting red between the trees. His instinct told him not to run, not to fight, but to lower his eyes like prey. He obeyed. The breathing slowed, then stopped. When he looked up, the forest was empty. At dawn, he found large impressions in the soil, like footprints, but far larger, leading nowhere. That man never laughed at ghost stories again. Do you see? The night strips us bare. No matter our strength, our reason, our certainty, darkness whispers that we are small. The fourth story comes from a young woman who worked late nights in a library. She loved the silence, the comfort of shelves rising like guardians around her. One evening, as she locked up, she noticed a figure sitting at a table in the far corner. A man in an old-fashioned coat, head bowed over a book. "I'm closing now," she called. No response. She stepped closer and closer until she reached the table. The chair was empty. But the book, yes, the book lay open. Its pages were blank, save for one word scrawled over and over in fading ink. Stay. She shut the book and ran, and though she still works in that library, she has never again dared to enter after dark. Stories like these are seeds. They grow in the mind until we begin to ask ourselves, what is watching us when we think we are alone? The fifth story I share is older, passed through generations. A group of friends once gathered at night by a bonfire near the edge of a desert. They sang, they laughed, and one of them, bold with drink, called out into the dark, "If spirits are real, come sit with us." The fire flickered. The air grew colder. The laughter died. And then, without a sound, a shadow stretched across the sand, longer than any man's, though no figure cast it. The friends stared, frozen. The shadow reached the circle, touched the bold man's feet. He collapsed as though struck, eyes rolling white. When he woke, he was never the same. He spoke little, smiled never, and refused to be outside after sunset for the rest of his days. His friends never again dared to invite the night so carelessly. Now, I tell you these not to trap you in fear, but to awaken the awareness of what lives beside us. For every story has a lesson if you listen deeply enough. The sixth story belongs to a mother. Her baby had been restless, crying late into the night. Exhausted, she finally drifted into sleep, only to wake at a faint sound, a lullaby being sung in the next room. She rose quickly, thinking her sister had come to help. But the house was empty, save for her and the child. The lullaby continued, soft and low, until she reached the crib. Her baby was sleeping peacefully now, but on the floor beside the crib lay a single feather, white as moonlight. No windows were open, no birds had entered. She still keeps that feather in a box, uncertain whether it belonged to something good or something that wanted her child. Do you feel the pattern? The night is not always cruel. Sometimes it comforts, sometimes it tempts, sometimes it frightens, but always it reveals. The seventh story takes us to the mountains. A hiker lost his way as dusk fell. He wandered for hours, the cold biting, the stars cruelly distant. Just as despair threatened, he saw a lantern light bobbing through the trees. Relieved, he followed it, calling out for help. The light moved ahead, guiding him, until at last he stumbled into his own camp, safe. But when he turned to thank his rescuer, there was no one there. Only the lantern flame, hovering in the air for a breath, then vanishing. He never returned to those mountains, but he lives today because of that ghostly guide. The eighth story is more chilling. A woman riding a night train fell asleep by the window. She woke with a start to find a man sitting across from her. She tried to greet him, but her voice stuck in her throat. At the next station, she rushed off, eager to escape. Later, she told her friends, describing him. Their faces went pale. That train car had been empty for years, retired after a crash that killed all inside. Among them, a man with a wide-brimmed hat. His ship drifted through fog thick as wool when he heard voices calling his name from the water below. He leaned over the railing. Faces stared back, pale and glistening, mouths opening in silent cries. The sea shimmered with them, hundreds, maybe thousands. He staggered back, praying aloud. The next morning, the captain told him this: "Never listen when the sea calls your name at night. It remembers the drowned." And now, the 10th story, the one I save for last, not because it is the darkest, but because it lingers like perfume on the air. A man walking home at twilight passed a graveyard. He felt a presence beside him, keeping pace. When he finally turned, he saw a young woman, her eyes kind, her smile sad. He turned to thank her, but she was gone. The next day, he returned to the graveyard, drawn by something he could not name. And there he saw her face carved on a stone, her name long forgotten by the world. He only says this: "That night, I was not afraid. That night, the dead walked me safely home." And I tell them to you now, so that when you step into the night, you remember, you are never truly alone. And this, my friend, is only the beginning. You have walked with me through 10 true stories of the night, but I must tell you something. The night never surrenders its secrets so easily. For every tale spoken aloud, there are others that linger, too heavy or too sacred for most to carry. These are not simply stories of shadows. They are mirrors, showing us the depths of love, the weight of fear, and the strange beauty of things we do not understand. If you will walk with me a little longer, I will share what lies behind those first whispers. The stories that scarred, transformed, and redeemed the ones who lived them. The first story of this deeper telling is about a boy who grew into a man haunted by the figure that hummed in the corner of his childhood room. You remember him, yes? For years he carried that memory like a thorn in his soul. He grew quiet, mistrustful of silence, always filling his nights with noise, music, laughter, anything to drown out the memory. One evening, years later, he sat with his own child, rocking her gently to sleep, and then it happened again. That same humming, low and sweet, drifted from the shadows of the room. He froze, staring at the corner where the darkness seemed thicker than before. But this time, instead of hiding, he whispered, "If you are here, I am not afraid. But you cannot touch her. You cannot take her." The humming faded. The air lifted. His child sighed in her sleep. Safe. And for the first time since boyhood, he felt the figure had come not to haunt, but to test his courage. Sometimes the night does not wish to break us, but to see if we are ready to stand. The second story takes us back to the woman on the bridge, who felt footsteps behind her in the mist. She never forgot that night, never crossed that bridge again, until her daughter fell ill, burning with fever, whispering nonsense in her sleep. One night, the child cried out, "The river, Mama, the river is calling me." The woman, terrified, took her daughter in her arms and walked to that cursed bridge. She begged the unseen, "Take me if you must, but leave her." The mist rose. The chains of the condemned rattled faintly in the air, and then silence. When she returned home, the fever had broken. Her child survived, but she never told the girl why she often woke at night and stood by her bedside, whispering prayers to a river that had once tried to claim them both. Some debts are repaid in fear, some in love. Now, the third story belongs again to the hunter who met the red eyes in the forest. He tried to push the memory aside, but the forest called him back. Months later, he returned, not with weapons, but with offerings. Food, water, tobacco, laid gently at the base of the trees. "I came before as a fool," he whispered into the branches, "but I come now as a guest." That night, as he slept by the fire, he dreamed of a figure tall and wild, with eyes like embers, who stood above him and said, "Respect is the only weapon you will ever need here." When he woke, the offerings were gone. He never saw the red eyes again, but he always felt watched not with hunger, but with wary guardianship. Sometimes what we fear most is simply something older, demanding that we remember our place. The fourth story follows the librarian, who once found the words "stay" written over and over in that blank book. It haunted her, yes, but it also pulled her back. Late at night, she began sneaking into the library, unable to resist. Each time she opened the book, new words appeared. Pleas, warnings, fragments of lives long gone. "Don't leave me. The fire is coming. Tell my mother I love her." She realized these were voices trapped, yearning to be heard. And though it frightened her, she began copying them, writing them down into her own notebook, as if she were their scribe. Years later, when the library nearly burned in a lightning storm, she saved that book first. Why? Because she understood. Sometimes the dead only ask to be remembered. The fifth story returns us to the desert bonfire, where the shadow touched the bold man's feet and shattered his spirit. His friends mourned the man he once was, but what they never told was that in his final days, he confessed to one of them. He said, "That shadow, it wasn't trying to curse me. It showed me my own arrogance. It showed me the weight of words. I mocked what I didn't understand, and it broke me so I could learn humility." He died quiet, yes, but with eyes softer than before. Sometimes the night does not punish, it teaches, though the lesson may feel cruel. The sixth story, the mother and her baby, and the mysterious feather left behind. She raised her child with that feather always near, locked in a wooden box. As the child grew, she became strangely resilient, rarely ill, rarely afraid. When asked about it, the mother would only smile and say, "You were watched over." Years later, on the child's wedding day, she placed the feather in her daughter's hands and whispered, "It is not mine to keep anymore." The daughter swears that on nights of sorrow when she weeps, she feels a gentle wing brushing her hair. Not all mysteries are dark. Some protect, some love. The seventh story returns to the mountains and the hiker who followed a lantern light to safety. He lived long, but he always wondered who had guided him. On his deathbed, he told his grandson, "The one who saved me was no stranger. It was my own brother who died in those mountains years before. I recognized the way the lantern swung, just as he carried it when we were boys." With his last breath, he said, "The dead do not always leave us. Sometimes they wait, lanterns in hand, until we need them most." And then he closed his eyes, smiling. The eighth story, the woman on the night train, staring at the man in the wide-brimmed hat. She avoided trains after that, lived a quiet life. But once, many years later, she saw him again, this time in a dream. He sat across from her once more, but now he lifted his head, revealing gentle eyes. He said, "You survived where I did not. Live for me too." She woke with tears streaming down her cheeks, and for the first time, she felt no fear of him. Some spirits remain not to haunt us, but to remind us that life is precious, and we must not waste it. The ninth story, the sailor who heard voices calling his name from the sea. He never told anyone what happened after, but I will tell you. Years later, during a storm, his ship nearly sank. As the waters swallowed the deck, he prayed, ready to surrender. And then he heard the same voices again, whispering, but this time, urging him toward a piece of wreckage. He clung to it until rescue came. He realized then that the drowned were not only vengeful, they remembered him, and they had spared him once more. "The sea remembers," he said, "but sometimes it remembers kindness too." And finally, the 10th story of the man walked home by a woman from the graveyard. He lived a long life, always visiting her grave on the anniversary of that night. People thought him strange, a man devoted to a ghost. But when he died, they found his journal. On its final page, he had written, "She was the love of my life. I met her only once, but she never left me. If love is true, even death cannot end it." And at his funeral, a white rose bloomed suddenly by her gravestone, though no hand had planted it. Some loves defy the rules of this world. Do you see now, my friend? The night is not only a keeper of terror. It is also a keeper of truths too vast for daylight. Fear and hope walk side by side in the dark. Where there are shadows, there is also the memory of light. These stories, yes, they frighten us, but more than that, they remind us to live, to walk humbly, to cherish love, to respect what we do not understand, and to trust that even in the darkest hour, something greater than ourselves is moving, watching, guiding. So the next time you step outside at night, do not rush back into the safety of your door. Stand still for a moment, breathe in the silence, listen. You may hear footsteps, you may feel a whisper, or you may see nothing at all. But remember these words: the night is not empty. It is alive, with all that came before, all that lingers still, and all that waits for you when your time comes.